Welcome to Elevate eCommerce, the podcast where we take your e-commerce game to the next level. I'm your host, Mayana Rose, and together we'll dive into the latest strategies in Amazon and omnichannel advertising, explore the future of e-commerce, and chat with fascinating industry experts on everything from A to Z in the e-commerce world. Tune in for practical tips, transformative success stories, and inspiration to elevate your business to new heights. Welcome back to the Elevate e-commerce podcast. Today, I'm excited to present our special guest, Oz Merchant, joining me today for a conversation. Oz is the founder of eCom Sellers HQ, an educational hub for anything e-commerce A through to Z. So from practical tips, powerful success stories, tons of tools, including Eva as one of the offerings. And let's dig into a conversation with Oz. So thank you so much for joining me. And just want to
Thank you, Mariette. Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here.
Thanks again for joining us. I think we're going to get some really amazing insights from your extensive experience. I believe you are also coach and consult on the side of developing this eCom Sellers HQ. So
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Working with different brands and eCom sellers.
Amazing. And how many years have you been in the industry?
In this space, the way I like to talk about it is I've had three kind of acts in my life. Act one was kind of retail, brick and mortar, wholesale, manufacturing. Then Act two was high tech software. And then kind of Act three has been e-commerce, which has been a culmination, bringing kind of that tech and retail world together. So it's been an interesting blend.
And a very valuable source of knowledge for many of the sellers out there who are tuning into this. So the first thing that I wanted to cover was, what is one common misunderstanding about running an e-commerce business that you frequently see, especially amongst those who don't have a traditional business background? I know we got into that a bit, but would love for you to share some thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, starting off, everyone thinks it'll be easier than it actually is. It's kind of like having a kid. If you knew how much work was really involved ahead of time, you may have second thoughts about it. So ignorance is kind of bliss in the beginning, and until you kind of get going, and then that serves as a kind of potential strategy. But once you've launched, though, successful sellers understand that the brand is separate from the channel they sell on. And this may seem like a no-brainer, but in reality, a lot of brands start thinking the channel is the brand. You hear people say, I'm an Amazon business. So, when you start thinking about it that way, once you've launched and the brand is getting a little bit bigger, then the distribution channel, when you think about it, is beyond just Amazon. When you think about, Shopify, if you're selling on Walmart, Shopify, any of those other places, those are different ways to get your product out there. Amazon is one of those kind of channels. So when you understand that distribution is bigger than the specific channel, then you basically start thinking about a brand in a different way. And choosing to kind of sell specifically on Amazon, that should be part of an overall strategy. It shouldn't be the business itself. So having that shift becomes very crucial.
That makes a lot of sense, especially because from my understanding, you work with sellers kind of at any stage from the very beginning to their exit. So I guess that kind of answers the question of, when you are launching, not to only build the business surrounding this one platform, Amazon, but rather transition into that mentality of seeing the brand as growing beyond it.
It really is like about strategy, right? So once you see that, okay, well, if I'm selling on Amazon, then that is my strategy of taking a product to market. that's a potential distribution channel. I may have multiple others. I don't have to necessarily sell on all of them, but I know that if I'm at least have that separation between channel and business, then I know that I can start looking at it. What's my return per channel? I can start thinking. I can run my metrics differently of how I run the business.
That makes perfect sense. It's a really good piece of advice, just separating the channel from the brand itself. On that note, how do you help entrepreneurs kind of adopt a CEO mindset and grow into that leader that they need to become? Some of them obviously ill prepared to embody that CEO mindset, maybe not even knowledgeable of what that means.
Yeah, well, I mean that separation is definitely a key part of it. I mean, the way I look at it, there's three functions of a CEO. They're working kind of in the business, they're working on the business, and they're working on themselves. And in my kind of coaching consulting, the way I look at it is, I'm helping them focus on the latter, so ladder two, so that they can actually more optimally perform in the business better. Now, what is that key shift to move from that entrepreneur mindset to a CEO mindset? Well, an entrepreneur starts companies. In fact, let me put it this way. So there's three types of business owners. There's that visionary who sees what they want to build, the operator who creates the organization, a process to make things kind of run smoothly. And then there's that hustler or that entrepreneur who's really taking those risks and getting that business going. And when I'm working with folks, I'm helping them identify who they are and what roles are needed when. Sometimes they have to step in and wear all those hats. In other cases, they need to just hire the right person to complement their skills, because that's what the business needs at that point in time, in that journey, that evolution of the business.
That seems like a really valuable layer to add. I think a lot of people who are probably, imagine, starting out and kind of have that entrepreneurial spirit to start selling and start a brand, whether they can grow to become the fit to lead that brand as it scales, or whether they need to hire someone. It just really helps to have that awareness that those are potential options and obstacles you might confront.
Yeah, it's a lot of self-reflection. I mean, at least I think the successful business, there's a lot of self-reflection in the process, meaning that you go through that journey and you kind of identify, look, this is where I'm good. This is what I really hate doing. I may kind of suffer through it and do it while I need to do it. But ideally, if I could put somebody else in that seat, they're going to do a far better job, enjoy it, and the company's going to benefit, as well as kind of my own mental sanity.
That makes perfect sense. I think everyone wants to be where their skill set lies at the end of the day. So,
Yeah,
and I guess it's a great thing if you develop a brand that, is on that level of scaling to where you need to hire someone on. So it doesn't
true.
have to be negative. So many entrepreneurs struggle with cash flow management. What advice do you give to ensure that their cash flow aligns with their growth goals? Cash flow is a huge factor in sustainable growth. So what systems or habits do you suggest for sellers?
Yeah, I really love this topic because it's such a crucial one. A strictly cash flow business, which is in the e-commerce or Amazon world, is kind of what I would say arbitrage or resale business. Then you're typically in a cash flow business, not a growth or equity business. So what's the difference? Well, a growth or equity business has some inherent value, some special IP like patents or trademarks to protect the brand. In some cases, larger resellers may also have some exclusive contracts with resale rights, and this means there's some value to be sold at some later date as well. Um, in these cases, it makes sense to put money back in the business, and other times, you don't want to. But if you're putting money back in the business, you're really hoping that if I put money back in, there's going to be some growth, and I'm going to have some sort of exit down the road. But if I'm in a cash flow business where there's no possibility for an exit, then the better strategy is probably for you to start taking some chips off the table. I mean, sure, you're probably going to want to put some money back in to increase the purchasing power to improve your margins. But if, you better start taking some money out of the business, or you're going to find out that probably 10 years or so are going to go by and you've basically just bought yourself a job for the last decade with nothing to show for it. And that's not a good feeling. And if you start taking money out and start moving it from risky assets like e-commerce into something less risky, less risky investments, your returns are going to be a little bit lower, but at least you'll sleep better at night. And that usually does feel good.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, if you're putting all that energy and effort into building something, then at the end of the day, I think most people want to scale. However, some people probably are okay with it being kind of a side career. But I guess that's important when you are kind of deciding what type of client you're working with, is like what their end goal is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people start, I mean, yeah, a lot of people will start without, well, I guess it depends on what type of business they start, meaning like uh, sometimes you can start small and kind of work your way up and you realize, okay, you're getting some traction and then you're going to kind of go all in on it. But yeah, I mean, it really does come back to, as you said, that end goal. You need to kind of know where you're headed with this. If there's no kind of long term, if, hey, I just want cash flow out of this, great. Just know that that's what business you're in. So you're not going to be surprised. That's what I guess comes down to, because I've seen people really thinking that, hey, I'm building this huge business and I'm going to be able to sell this. But there was no, inherent value in it. There was no kind of equity to say, okay, somebody's else could take this over and buy it and give you money for it. So they're kind of a little bit surprised and extremely disappointed because nobody wants to buy their business, and they didn't really take that money out when they had it.
That makes a lot of sense. I would think also, and given your kind of position, having developed this, educational hub and service provider almost, for e-com sellers, at what point do you see kind of data informing this, profit analytics kind of informing this distinction between what kind of business it is, if there's, a potential two directions it's going. So yeah, if you just want to speak to kind of that piece.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if it's data, but it's just knowing kind of the business model itself. Meaning that, okay, if I'm building a brand, then there's an actual brand, a product that is going to have some value in it. But if I'm just basically buying it and reselling, then unless think about it. If you're Best Buy, why does Best Buy have, it's a publicly traded company? What's the value in Best Buy? They're just buying and reselling,
Mm-hmm.
but they can have the purchasing power and they can buy at such a scale that it gives them inherent value that they can go to Samsung and buy this kind of volume directly, or go to Sony and buy this volume directly. So because of that, they can actually run a very profitable business, and by running such a profitable business, they can take it to market and say, okay, well, there's these share values worth something, then I can basically sell these shares to somebody wanting to buy them because there's inherent value in the business. But if you don't have that kind of a business that someone would say, you're doing something that's that exclusive or original, that you have that kind of buying power or exclusivity, then from a reselling standpoint, what kind of value is there?
That makes a lot of sense, and that feels to me, and of course, correct me if I'm wrong, that kind of comes down to also a huge marketing initiative of of using the right kind of data-driven decisions to advertise correctly and scale at the moments that you do feel that the brand could be building value beyond just that kind of cash flow.
Correct. I mean, at least in that reselling model, then you're saying that I'm building the brand of being the reseller, like
Mhm.
a Best Buy or like a B&H Photo. B&H Photo is another one that's been around for a long time, but they're just buying and reselling products. But they've established themselves as such a brand to buy kind of electronics that everyone will still go to them and buy from them. And I don't think they're public, but they're privately held. But they are a very big business. But unless they do something different, inherently they could still just be a cash flow business, meaning that they can buy at low prices and sell for high prices and have a really good cash flow, healthy business. So you just have to kind of decide what type of business you want to be in. If you want to build a brand that, that brand itself, somebody's willing to pay for, and they could, buy it and take it and, run with it as its own kind of business, then there's some inherent value in that brand. But a lot of businesses are just good operations. So you can buy it and take it over, but still just a cash flow making machine. Think of it as a really good, like a dry cleaning business. You may not be able to, maybe you get it systematized and process, create enough process that you can basically take it and franchise the model out. But for most of them, it's just, I've figured out a way that I can, this cost me this much money to run it, but I can generate this many sales, so I should have a nice net positive cash flow for the business. So I could potentially sell that if somebody else wants that cash flow, but what I'm really selling is a cash flow business. Now, some people may say there's some inherent value that I can get maybe a multiple or two off of that, because that I've built that customer base, and that's what you're really buying, is that customer base from me. But that becomes, so you have to kind of figure out where is that value piece.
Right. And that's kind of what you would go in and help said person figure out if they weren't quite even aware of what type of business model they were going for. So that seems really valuable to decide at the beginning. And there kind of seems like there's, maybe the two options being, you're reselling or you're building the product yourself. And then that goes into production costs. So whatever money you're purchasing something with, you would be putting into production costs, and then you have to offset that beyond a cash flow. So what are the, if somebody's graduating from just kind of that and they're intending to build something that could scale and, be revenue based, what would be some of the, key strategies that they would start to employ to start to build beyond just, the present customer base and covering costs of, either buying products or making the products?
Are you saying from a brand perspective?
From a brand perspective, like what are those, like when you get to that certain level of your business where your operations are running, but you're trying to scale, like what are some of the key factors to kind of start adding in to get there?
Yeah. So I mean, depending kind of how far along you're in that journey, you may say, okay, well, did I get there with one product? Did I get there with, I mean, I've seen somebody that had 3 products and they were doing $10 million. So, you don't need a lot of products to get really big. So it's just a matter of figuring out, what right 3 products or 2 products that may potentially get you there. But for a lot of people, they're going to have a number of different products they're going to launch over a period of time. So it may be extending your product line. It may be servicing kind of new geo markets, maybe new platforms. So it just kind of depends on where you're at in the journey, what steps you want to take to scale it further. Ideally over time, you want to start building that brand so that you're cutting down on some of the ad spend, because the brand awareness is driving more direct traffic. I mean,
Right.
It takes a long time, but over time, your customer acquisition costs should go down because you're building a solid brand. And people start searching directly for your brand rather than looking for the category, and then you show up as an option.
Absolutely. And I think that probably in that phase that you're talking about of building the brand awareness, that's kind of the time to invest in your advertising. And then when, ideally people, there's products that I get recommended by a friend, and that's how it goes, and they take off that way. That's kind of a lucky way to go. And then there's other avenues like DSP, and obviously within the Amazon ecosystem like PPC and all of that. So how do you I guess help customers at that phase? Like, do you point them to certain services or platforms to help them optimize within each ecosystem that they're expanding to, or what's your best recommendation for?
Yeah, I mean, I don't get into the ad side of things. So usually, they'll be wanting to work with an agency if they want to, or if they're doing it in-house, to just get the right tools in place to run that internally. But in the end of the day, what the whole purpose of advertising is, you're essentially buying mind share. And over time, hopefully you've done a good enough job through so many kind of different avenues, whether that's through PPC, whether that's through social media, through influencer marketing, that you're no longer kind of the category thought. You've shifted from category to brand recognition. And then, I guess the other extreme of that is you go beyond it, and your name gets associated to the category, where people use the word like Kleenex and Band-Aid for the category, rather than, recognizing that it's the brand itself. So maybe there's that sweet spot before you cross over that, and you kind of get diluted a little bit, because they just start using the category, your brand as the category.
Right. Yeah, that kind of seems like the brand goals crossover to get to that stage of kind of your brand being synonymous with the item, like Kleenex.
Yeah.
I guess Band-Aid, didn't even didn't even realize that's a brand, which is crazy. I just call them Band-Aids.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's all really insightful, and probably a lot of stuff that also doesn't even get commonly talked about unless you actually explore a little bit of that marketing funnel once you kind of enter into this entrepreneurial on track to either CEO or growing your brand. So as an industry consultant and someone who's just very aware of a lot of the top tech and changes within the industry, what shifts are you noticing in how brands approach omni-channel selling, and what role, you kind of touched on this in the beginning, but what role does Amazon play within the larger ecosystem? It's a very dominant channel, so sometimes it can kind of set the stage for some of the other ones. But what are you noticing as far as the landscape goes?
Yeah, what I found is, where a seller begins that journey, it very much influences how they think about the overall strategy. Meaning, like, if you're selling on Amazon because it offers a lower barrier to entry, that means you can start off being an arbitrage seller, go to become a wholesaler, and then launch a private label line. And for most of these sellers, the channel is that business, so they don't see that difference. Versus when you're starting on, say, for Shopify first, they need to think about selling online very differently. It's an expensive undertaking, and to be not being in a bustling mall like Amazon, but rather being in this independent store in the middle of nowhere, spending lots of money on kind of digital billboards to help drive traffic to your store. So for them, their store, their brand, that's the business. And it's only after they've been doing this for maybe for a while, they start thinking, wondering, do I want to be in the mall too? Do I want to go into doing, B2B and go directly into the superstores? So this is, at least from the initial thought process, that's where I end up seeing a lot of. But as soon as that brand starts getting big enough, there ends up coming a decision point where, am I that person that's going to be able to take this brand kind of across to other channels or even other geographic markets? Or is there an opportunity potentially to sell this business to somebody who's got deeper pockets, maybe more experience in executing an omni-channel strategy? Maybe that makes more sense. So I mean, in either case, omnichannel is going to be a key part of the strategy as you kind of start growing, because you're going to want to, over time, find new avenues, new channels to sit there and offset some of your marginal costs. Meaning like you may have less sales as another channel, but you're going to get maybe higher margins. So you want to get overall blended margins that just make you more profitable business. So omnichannel definitely is a strategy that I think most people will occupy at some point. It's just a matter of, are they the person that's going to do it, or is this a good jumping off point? Maybe, I built this brand in the US market, but I don't want to take it into Europe. I don't want to figure out all the nuances of getting into that market, regulations, all that stuff. Maybe I've really done a great job on Amazon. I don't want to sit there and figure out how to do a D2C play, or be successful on Walmart or other platforms. So it just comes down to what's right for you in that journey. But knowing that, I've hit the point where I've kind of maximized how much I can make. I mean, I see some people going too wide too soon,
Hmm.
and and sometimes it's just because they hit a friction point and then they jump to, let me see if there's, grass is greener type mindset. Let me just go explore some of these other channels. So I think in those cases, you're better off just figuring out and solving the problem that's really there in front of you, rather than going too wide too soon. Basically maximize that channel and then say, okay, what do I want to go next? What other channel makes more sense to go next, or what the geo market makes more sense to go to?
Right. And I could see how, people might think that spreading out very quickly might increase brand awareness in its own way, because you're getting access to all these new, markets that are shopping within their ecosystems. But you're saying that it's much smarter to kind of hone in on one ecosystem, see what works as sort of an incubation, and then from there, strategically take it out.
Well, I'm saying more so is what's driving the behavior. Is it because you ran into this hurdle? I just can't get, my acquisition cost below this number or this percentage. And because of that, I am not willing to put forth additional cycles to go crack that code and kind of figure out how to make it more efficient, more optimized. And I'm just jumping to another kind of channel or vertical. So it's saying, it's just kind of, it may be the right strategy, but just make sure it's part of a strategy, not a reactionary move because of some other challenges you're facing.
Right, because then you can kind of end up burning money, and especially if you're investing in advertising on these multiple platforms, that could and not kind of tracking your analytics, you might just kind of burn out and spread too thin. I could see that being a challenge.
Yeah. And that's where, understanding the value of efficiency, because it's easy to say, I just jumped to this new channel and I can throw some money in it and great, I'm getting sales again. But I didn't really drive more efficiency and optimize my first channel, but I'm moving to the next one. So it's easy to kind of see if throwing money starts generating sales, and it's like, okay, that becomes the new shiny object to go chase,
Mhm.
rather than kind of doing the hard work of figuring out, how do I, squeeze every drop out of this channel before I go to the next one.
Yeah,
Because
that
just
makes
the discipline of efficiency.
absolutely. And I think that, back to Amazon just being this major one, I feel like it's probably for most e-com sellers who are just launching a product or launching a brand, like that's almost this unavoidable animal, and it kind of can become this incubator to even test out what kind of like product market fit there is for this product, if you create a new one or if you're reselling, just if it's going to take off. Feels like Amazon is a really good place to start, but it's not the cheapest. It's just
Yeah. Please not anymore.
yeah. um well, awesome. So I was going to ask you just quickly, like, because we have, Thanksgiving coming up, Turkey 5, the holidays, and you often, it seems like, kind of focus on a high level of what a brand strategy is and their growth path. But what do you suggest brands do for tentpole events and kind of gearing up for them? I know that's a little bit honing in on sort of the upcoming season, but
I'm laughing because I don't think I've ever heard the word tentpole. Took me a second to get that. Yeah, I mean,
we can,
what?
if you don't like tentpole, we can use
I just never heard the term, so that's why I was like, oh,
okay.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
But it's funny. Last year. I was surprised to hear how many brands basically said no to Black Friday, meaning that they knew they're going to get a bump in sales because rising tides lift all boats. But essentially, they just didn't want to take a hit on their margins, and it's certainly a choice, kind of as you're looking at kind of holidays, because was it, I think Honey is one of these apps that everyone gets to kind of get the alerts to say, where the deals and such. So from a consumer standpoint, they're always looking for kind of good deals. But I think from as a seller standpoint, you'd be thinking about, what type of products are you selling? Is it the right, if it's a gift item, or maybe if you launched a new product in, say, September, and you intentionally kept the price high knowing that you're going to drop it on Black Friday, then as a part of a strategy, it may make sense. But not everybody does that. In this space, at least it's commonplace from a reseller standpoint, repricing tools. They're using that often to kind of win buy box. But many brands don't actually know that too is an option for them. That there's actually kind of dynamic pricing kind of tools out there, solutions out there to help ensure they're not leaving money on the table.
Right.
So, on the platform, we've got a number of those that are really kind of focused around helping those brands use AI to ratchet up or down a price, so that ideally they're getting the most out of every sale.
So kind of leaning on those dynamic pricings. I know Eva definitely offers that as one of their platform features through the AI, and so that's kind of feels like something, if you are going to go for Black Friday or one of these kind of discount extravaganza events, then leaning on those kind of dynamic pricing so that you don't go too low on your margins.
Yeah. And for most folks, I mean, depending on the product, the additional margins they'll gain covers the cost of any solutions they typically will invest in.
That makes sense. But then some brands avoid it because it's like kind of they're on a steady year pace anyway. And so it's kind of more, it's that higher risk moment that you can either kind of win big or also, have some inventory issues or some other things come up. So that's definitely a key thing to look out for people is, make sure that you have support with your dynamic pricing too, because I think it's pretty hard to do it manually these days.
And to your point, you don't want to have it done, executed so well that you stock out. So so that's a good point. You keep that in mind, that you're not solving one problem to just create another problem.
Right. Because then your rankings go down. It's like it's a whole chicken and egg thing. So you have to be very holistically focused when you're tackling these kind of bigger tentpole events. Now you know the term.
I love it.
So
is that specifically like a New Mexico term, or?
No, I mean it was an internet term. I don't know. I think
never heard the term.
Maybe it came from ChatGPT, but I felt like it was kind of a buzzword in the e-commerce space, actually, because I explore a lot of content in the space, and I felt like I was coming across the tentpole events as being kind of markers of the year for sellers, where things kind of spike. But I think there's I'll check a thesaurus. I'll throw some other words at
No, but
you.
it's got to be a very old word because I mean it's tentpole. I mean it's like the old
Yes,
days of when you'd actually have a tent and a pole, and you'd say that's
something.
where all your sales were going to be.
Yeah.
So I just
Synonymous.
haven't heard it
Well,
in the e-commerce world.
someone should make a brand called Tentpole and then make it synonymous with.
There you go, listeners. That's your next
Yeah,
hack. Go.
brand to start. We don't know what it's either camping space or like some kind of technology that can help with seasonal spikes. But
There you
one of
go.
the two. So that's awesome. And you had mentioned, which I forgot to kind of bring up, you're developing your own AI chatbot to fit into this eCom Sellers HQ, kind of like a business coach AI hybrid.
Yeah, that's essentially so. The platform is a kind of a hub for all the resources, all the software, all the service providers, all the money options, all the legal, tax, sourcing, 3PLs, all the events. Soon I'll have all the webinars as well. So all the M&A. So basically everything you're looking for in one platform. But then I've added in this AI layer so that it's learning and taking all this information and essentially becoming kind of the definitive digital e-commerce coach. So you can ask it any question you want, and it should have an answer for you. So the whole idea is that it's going to get smarter and smarter as more people ask it questions, and it'll just kind of help sellers to wherever they're at in the journey. And it's interesting to see that I see questions from, how do I go international to, what's kind of some of the latest hacks on Amazon. So you kind of see all different types of questions being asked on it, and it's got answers for you. So, and it'll just get smarter by the day.
That seems like a really brilliant, tie into kind of what Eva offers. It feels like a really helpful kind of central middleman for any stage of your journey as a seller, to find the right resources that you need. Because as we know, the internet is a kind of wild west of sponsored things and not sponsored things. And, for better or for worse, the advertisings work, but it doesn't always answer what exactly you're looking for. So I think using this AI to really fine tune into these niche areas is really crucial. Well, that culminates all my questions. If there's anything else you'd like to share with any sellers at any stage of their journey, feel free. And if not, we can.
Yeah, my only ask would be, if you get a chance, go check out the eCommerce Sellers HQ platform. It's totally free for sellers, and it's really about sellers helping sellers. So the idea is you can go leave a review for whatever you use, whether it's Eva, whether it's other products, solutions, service providers, so that it helps add value to other sellers. That's the whole idea behind it, is that this kind of free resource to say, this is what I'm experiencing. Because what I found was it was all disjointed. There's random, Discord groups or Reddits or Facebook groups, and it's just kind of scattered everywhere. It's like, let me just bring one central hub to bring all that information together, have sellers share their insights on it, and help other sellers in the journey. And that's one of the things I've really enjoyed about this community as a whole. I mean, e-commerce is one of the most collaborative and supportive ecosystems that I think I've ever been in, across a lot of other verticals that I've been in. So it's really cool to see.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I mean, amazing thing that you developed, and I hope that you guys all do go check it out, because it seems like a really powerful resource. And Eva's on there. We're going to work on our ratings, I promise, because we
Love
gotta.
it.
That's how it works with rating systems. So, well, thank you so much for joining today, Oz, and I hope to see you back here for another topic session. You're a wealth of knowledge, and appreciate your time. So
Thank you so
hope you
much,
have a
Mariana.
good day, and I'll speak to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.